Good morning, Delaware. Welcome to Off the Shelf. It's great to have you here. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, George.
How the heck are you?
I'm happy to see sunshine this week.
Yeah, isn't it nice? It's sort of like a taste of spring.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to not having icy, ugly, dirty snow in my front lawn.
Oh, it's not the most pleasant thing.
No, it really isn't. And you know what is pleasant?
Our guest today?
Our guest today, yes.
Is it our guest today?
I thought that was a good segue. Good morning, Josh.
Well, good morning.
This is Josh Batenhorst from Bright Star Theater Company, and we are delighted to have you here, and we are delighted to have your company coming to visit us, not once but twice in the next few weeks. So we're really happy to have you here, and so welcome.
Well, thank you, George and Nicole. Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be traveling to your area, and we actually have 5 tours on the road right now, traveling to various parts of the country. And some of us are here in Asheville, where our headquarters are, producing shows virtually for schools this week. We have a group that we have been partners with for a long time, the Savannah Black Heritage Festival from Savannah, Georgia, and they are hosting us virtually to all the schools in Savannah, Georgia this week. So we're really excited to be back out doing shows, but also still doing virtual stuff as well. So
yeah,
thank you for having us.
We're incredibly excited to have you. And you did your own perfect introduction, because my first question out of the bat was going to be, tell us a little bit about Bright Star Touring Company.
Absolutely. So Bright Star, we have been around for a long time, actually. We are in our 19th year. The founder and owner of the company is David Ostergaard. He started the company, and we did the math by counting on our fingers, because it's always weird when you go like over decades and how do you count it. But his first show was in 2003. So if you like count on your fingers, once you get to 2022, you're in your 20th year.
Yeah.
And so next year will mark our 20th season of doing shows, because our first show was in the 2003-2004 school year. So anyway, it worked out to being the 20th season. I think you might even get to celebrate 20th twice if you want to. But we've been going on for a while, and
yeah, that's longer than a lot of marriages last.
Yeah.
So
we will be performing. Like I said, we're back to 5 companies. When COVID hit, we had 10 tours out on the road at that point in time, kind of partially because we still had a bunch of Black History tours out on the road going to different places, but we also, March is Women's History Month, and we had a couple of Women's History tours out on the road as well when we were when COVID hit. And so at that time we had 10. So we're halfway back, is the way we think about it right now.
Wow. So when you talk about these troops being out on the road, how many people are you talking about? What kind of technical setups? I mean, that's a lot of people.
Right.
It is over the course of the year. Now it's only 2 people on any one tour.
Okay.
So and we do it that way for a couple of reasons. One is to just keep the costs down so that we can tour to schools and libraries and museums and and keep it affordable for them, because those are not well-funded places a lot of the times, and they need, so their budgets are appropriate for the size of the venue and things like that. So that's why we have 2 actors travel in our tours. We put them in vans. Our model is 1 van, 2 actors, 3 shows, 45 minutes each. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Nice.
And yeah. So the actors come to us and they learn all 3 shows that they tour with, and then they come in for only a week of rehearsal. So they get the script when things are going well, about a month and a half ahead of time. When things get really tight, sometimes that they only get the scripts a couple of weeks ahead of time. So the actors are like going, "Whoa, okay, here's over 2 hours of material to learn," and they always do it somehow. I'm always amazed by how actors can adapt and learn and make things work for them. And we throw costumes on them, and we rehearse and rehearse, and then we send them out the door, and they travel for anywhere from 6 to 10 or even longer weeks out on tour.
Oh, wow.
So the actors that are going to be coming to you guys next week, I think, they were the first group that went out on the road. So they've been traveling since really the second week in January, going around places. And
Boy, those two actors better really like each other.
Right.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, you become very close. Whether you become friends or not is kind of a different question, but you do become very close with another person when you travel like that.
Well, you've got a whole boatload of shows that are on tour. You mentioned, you've got ones that came from Black History Month, Women's History Month. The one that's coming to us on this coming Monday is African Folk Tales. So is it mostly historical shows? And are you writing the content? How are you finding the content for them?
Sure. So over 20 years, you write a lot of shows. So that's one answer to that question. So the Black History shows really started out of some questions that David and his partner at the time were receiving as they were taking their shows, because they started with anti-bullying shows, really. And as they came around, they're like, do you guys have anything that we could do for Black History Month? There's not a lot in the curriculum to support it, and we would love to get, some shows. And so David at the time partnered with a couple of local actors that were interested in touring, and they wrote our first Black History show, Heroes of the Underground Railroad. And so that show started in 2004. And then very soon they got some requests to do some more Dr. King focused work. So we wrote a Meet Dr. King show and Struggle for Freedom, which is a little bit older version of the same story. And then started getting approached to do something about music, and so that's really, or something, and then something about Africa. So really, that's kind of how it happened. Jackie Robinson, people show interest and they ask, hey, could you do something about this person or that person? We partnered way back in 2015 with the National Park Service and did a tour of all of the national parks in the Midwest, which includes the home site of George Washington Carver. So that was kind of like where we started the show, George Washington Carver and Friends, was to kind of accommodate some work there. And so that's how it happens. We got approached by a group in our headquarters in Asheville, North Carolina, which is very close to, it's the ancestral home of the Cherokee Indians.
Okay.
And we have recently partnered with the Cherokee Historical Association, who's interested in doing some shows about Cherokee heritage and history, and so we're very excited, and that's how it happens, is that you start working and you do shows, and then people ask, well, can you do this?
Right.
Can you do this? And so you start, you add on.
Well, they only ask you if you can do this if they like what you've already done. So obviously you've been having a lot of success with what you've been doing.
I think so, and a lot of companies have come and gone over the years, and COVID brought its own challenges to the company. But I think we pride ourselves on having high quality shows, accurate historical shows, and also shows. All of our shows have a strong character message that students can make a difference, that the choices that they make are important, that the choices that they how they treat each other is very important. And really, I think that's what resonates more than anything, is that we have a responsibility with each other and to our community to treat each other kindly and with respect and with dignity. And those are the stories that we try to tell.
So tell us a little bit about what we're going to see at the program coming up this week. It's the African Folktales show. So what are we going to see?
Yeah, so African Folktales is a story about two, in the concept of the show, the actors are students, and they have been given the challenge of doing a presentation, and the audience shows up and kind of catches our actors by surprise as they are preparing, and they sort of on the spot deliver the information that they've done. And what you'll find out is both of these actors have a connection to Africa, either by by very recent heritage. In our concept, one of the characters, their family is recently moved and immigrated from Uganda, because we wanted to tell the story that not everybody that is of African heritage came at the same time in America. There's still immigration that's coming from Africa, and a lot of back and forth of cultural sharing that's happening. And so we wanted to tell some of that story and represent it in the story. And so one of the characters has recently, his family recently immigrated, and then one of the characters, their family was enslaved at a certain time. And so we tell both of those stories kind of through this, and then they tell their connection to Africa and the African continent, and then we tell a lot of different stories from different cultures from different parts of Africa. I think there's maybe 5 stories total. Some of them happen pretty fast over the course of 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are kind of like pourquoi tales, which are these tales from Africa that kind of just tell you the Rudyard Kipling sort of like stole the idea of like, the how so stories, or how did this come to be. So that's the type of story that comes along. We have a very famous Anansi story. So that's one of those pourquoi tales of how the spider got its long legs.
I love Anansi stories. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We tell a story about how the elephant got its long nose and the giraffe got its long neck. So
Mm-hmm.
those are great stories for really younger students too. And then there's a great Swahili story about how stories came to be, which is a really cool story. And I think you're going to love it. Our actors on the tour, they're performing right now, so they couldn't record with this right now. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. They got kind of a last minute booking. So anyway, but Faith and Quinn are lovely people and wonderful actors, and you guys are going to really enjoy the show.
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about Bright Star and about what we're going to be able to see coming up this coming Monday. That is March 24th.
21st?
I'm sorry, February, not
goodness,
March.
yeah. We're all over the place.
Yes,
Monday, February 21st, 11 a.m.
Thank you
The
for-
Orange Branch
We'll
Library.
come back, guys.
Yes.
We'll come back.
Well, actually, you are going
All
to.
you got to do is say the word.
You're coming back in March to do the Rosa Parkinson Friends, so we're looking forward to that too. So we'll talk more about that later in the month. So
Yes.
thank you very much,
Great.
Josh, for being with us, and thank you so much
Absolutely.
for doing this great work. So we appreciate it, and if and I used to be able to talk this language.
What are you getting at?
What I'm
George?
trying to get at is stay tuned, because we'll be right back to talk about a couple of books that are coming up and some other events that are happening at the library. So stay tuned. And welcome back to Off the Shelf. We want to thank again Josh Batenhorst, the CEO of Bright Star Touring Company, for being our guest this morning. Josh we were just saying what a great radio guest he is. You wind him up and let him go, because he just gave us lots of good information. So don't forget, they will be here next Monday, February 21st.
11 a.m.
That date is just blocked in my head for some reason.
It's my mother's birthday.
Oh, well.
So I can't forget it.
You better not.
No.
Yeah. So, okay, good.
65. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Shh. Nicole.
My mom always said that my dad was the perfect husband because he remembered her birthday but forgot her age.
Right. No,
So-
I have no idea how old my mother is. I feel like that's worse. I don't have.
And if that laugh you hear behind the other microphone is Bob Allen, who is sitting in as our engineer today. Thank you, Bob. I think this is a first for us in all these years.
Hi, kids.
I feel like we should be doing this at the Solar Saloon.
Come on by. Drinks are on you.
Thank you. Only if I'm particularly sloppy. So anyway, so you heard our interview in the first half of the show, so we're going to use the second half of this show to talk about books and stuff that we've been reading. So what have you been reading recently?
Well, I did this a couple months ago whenever I was ready to see Hadestown in my Broadway Across America series down in Columbus at the Ohio and Palace Theaters. The show that just came this past week was Come From Away.
Oh, it was so good.
You saw it. I saw it. Molly saw it. Shannon's. We had like a handful of staff members.
Karen from the Friends saw it.
Right.
So
many of us going, big theater supporters, we librarians and we library folk. It was amazing.
you don't get much better theater than that. I don't care if you're sitting at a front row seat in Broadway
Oh my gosh.
or if you are, anywhere, because community theater. This was just one of the best theater experiences I've ever had.
Right. And so to give you context why I'm talking about Come From Away, because the show's already come and gone, so you can't go see it.
Still available on Disney Plus.
Not Apple TV.
Apple TV.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that's it.
You're right.
Hamilton's
Yes,
on
Apple
Disney
TV.
Plus.
That's
Yeah,
right,
Apple
yes.
TV.
That's why I spend too much money on streaming
On
services
all of the
every month.
streaming
Yeah.
services, right? So there is a book that was published in 2002, so just a year after 9/11 happened, and it's called The Day the World Came to Town, 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland. It's by Jim Defede, and this is the story. And it's what the musical pulls stories from, as well as other interviews and other, anecdotes and stories that happened in Gander, Newfoundland, Canada on 9/11. So how in the world are we making a musical about Canada for 9/11? And the story is that Gander, this town in Newfoundland, was basically created on the sole reason that it had an airport base. It had a very long airstrip because back during World War II, there were flights that needed to make it across the Atlantic. And so this was the place where the planes would refuel and then go the long journey across the Atlantic. And then basically after World War II, and the city built up around this Air Force base or this airport. And then after World War II, they tried to transform the airport into more commercial liners, more just typical jet airliners. And the planes evolved, and so they could hold more gas. And so the airport really wasn't needed as much anymore. So you have this town in Gander, and today it really is only landing between 6 and 12 flights a day. And 9/11 happens, and the American government closes American airspace. It says if you're in the air in American airspace right now, you have to ground your flight immediately. Doesn't matter where you are.
Or if you're coming into America.
You can't land in America.
Right.
So what happens to those flights that are coming internationally to America? Well, basically, their pilots had to make an immediate decision of, I'm past the halfway point. We're going to Canada or South America, or I'm going to turn around because I have enough fuel to make it back from where we departed from. Well, the very first place that most of those planes are going to find their way into is Gander, Newfoundland. So this small town barely has a population of 10,000 people. And on 9/11, they landed 38 planes for a total of 6,595 passengers and crew members in this town. So this town practically doubles in population overnight because they have an airstrip that's able to ground them. If you can imagine all of the other things that are happening on 9/11 as well. So you have chaos. You have, who do we trust? These flights that came into our airspace we couldn't trust. So these people who just landed in Gander, how can we trust them? So then these planes have landed, but the American government is saying no one can exit the planes because we need to debrief them. So then you have passengers who are sitting on these planes for 28 hours sometimes from the start to the finish. Imagine some of the needs that you might have 28 hours across a flight. The book, The Day the World Came to Town by Jim Defede, tells all of these stories in such a fantastic way. It weaves them together in a narrative that makes a lot of sense. You fall in love with some characters and you really follow their story all the way to the end. One of the funny anecdotes is you might want a smoke break after a really long flight. And they weren't letting anybody off the plane. But it also is 2002, so they're not letting people smoke on the plane. And so the passengers are getting a little antsy. And the, captains, the flight pilots and captains, they're calling in and they're saying, like, hey, Gander, can you do something about these folks on our plane who really want a smoke break? So they call the local pharmacy, and the local pharmacy brings nicotine patches. They're like, here, figure it out. You've got other planes where people, some pilots told their crew and passengers the news. They told them why the planes were grounded. Some pilots didn't. So some people are sitting on their planes 28 hours. They get off their plane and walk into the airport to see the news and find out what's happening for the first time.
Yeah, because you got to remember, this was 2002. Not a lot of people had cell phones.
Right. I mean, there was minimal communication. Sometimes even the pilots knew about what was happening, and they were like, well, do I tell the passengers? The crux of the entire story is how this tiny town of Gander, Newfoundland came together to house nearly 7,000 people and do it without asking for anything in return. Mm-hmm. The kindness in their hearts, the openness, one of the women, Beulah, who runs the local school, is like, oh yeah, our local school can hold about 400 people. They say, well, how's 700? And she's like, okay, well, we can make that work too. It was never no. It was never no out of their mouths. There were, the pharmacist was finding out, tell me who on your planes needs medication. I will make it happen. The local SPCA, Protection of Animals, they were, okay, there have got to be animals on these flights. As it happens, there were 2 bonobos coming to the Columbus Zoo. And so she figures out how to care for the animals on the flights because they weren't letting people take out their baggage. But the animals are in the undercarry.
Yep.
So it is a great book. If you have Hoopla downloaded, you can download the audiobook. It's read by Ray Porter, one of the best audiobook readers, and it's a 6-hour audiobook. You can also just check out The Day the World Came to Town, 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland by Jim Defede. You can also on Hoopla download the soundtrack, Come From Away.
Good.
And so you can download that. And then there is which I haven't made my way all the way through it yet, there is a coffee table book called Come From Away, Welcome to the Rock. And it is the development of the musical and where they took some of their stories and the progression of the musical.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
It was terrific. I just, like I said, I can't imagine a better theatrical experience than that show was. So I'm going to talk a little bit about The Reading List by Sara Nisha Adams. If you were listening last week, I interviewed Sara, and you also know that she is going to be doing a Zoom author visit on the 22nd of February at 2 o'clock, 2/22 at 2. And so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the book because it's a really good book. It's a nice book. It is a Valentine to people who love reading, who love libraries. There are 2 lead characters, Muhesh Patel, who is a widower. He misses his wife deeply. She was a constant reader. And he has 3 grown daughters who kind of dominate his life, who think they have to take care of him since their mother has died. He spends most of his days mourning his loss, avoiding other people, and watching nature documentaries, especially those narrated by David Attenborough on television.
They're
he
the
just
best.
loves those, the National Geographic documentaries.
We have a lot in common.
Then he meets Alicia, who's a kind of a disaffected 17-year-old. She has this crummy, at least she thinks it's a crummy summer job, working at a public library that the world's forgotten. She has this older brother, Aiden, whom she adores, and the 2 of them are caring for their mother, who has become basically a hermit since her dad walked away. And she's just become totally dysfunctional. So Makeesh and Alicia meet when Makeesh discovers a library book that his late wife had checked out but never had a chance to return. They don't meet cute. Alicia's really rude to him and makes his visit to the library not very pleasant. And so, but he walks out, forgets to return the book, and then so he has to come back. And when he comes back, he not only wants to return the book, but he wants to find a way to start relating to his granddaughter, who is this constant reader, like his ex-wife. And so they both find this list of books. And it says these are books you really might need to read at some point. And so they both start in on the list, and that gives them a common ground to talk to each other and to kind of get back into society. And that's what the book is about. It's about how books can bring people together to act as a bridge between generations, between cultures, and sometimes between your worse self and your better self. And it's not a perfect book. There's a number of extraneous characters I think she could have easily extracted. There's a bit of unearned tragedy in the book that feels more like a plot device than it really developing around a real character. And Alicia's and Aiden's mother is kind of way too far over the top in her abandonment grief. But overall, this really is a really nice diversion. It's a good book. It's about a book about the magic of books and reading. And it also kind of points up the importance of libraries in making this happen. So again, I'm really looking forward. If you heard the interview with Sara last week, she's an interesting person. I'm hoping we're going to get her to read a little more from the book so that you can get a better feel for it. And I think you'll really enjoy meeting her and being part of that event. It is a fundraiser. There's a small charge for the tickets. We're also working with Fresh Start to have tea and crumpets.
Absolutely.
To have a little snack with it as well. So I hope you'll be able to check it out. We've got a couple of book clubs coming up at the library this week. Actually, all 3 of them are also on the 22nd. They're doing In the Shadow of the Banyan by Vetty Ratner at the book club that Pam runs at the Delaware Library. And then both of the Powell and the Ostrander branch libraries are both doing The Four Winds Winds by Kristen Hanna.
Yes, and I'll probably have a review for that in the coming weeks as well because I'm listening to that
Oh,
one.
that's great. So, all right. So we are running a little bit out of time here, but we hope you will come to the Friends event on Tuesday. I want to thank the Friends for their help. I want to thank Bob Allen for sitting behind the board for us.
My pleasure.
Nicole, always a pleasure to do this.
Yes, absolutely.
And we will see you in the stacks.